There are people who wake up one day and realize they no longer fit, not because the world has changed, but because they have. They look around and see the same faces, the same conversations, the same patterns, but something inside them has shifted so deeply that everything feels distant now, foreign, as if they've been traveling through invisible territories while everyone else remained exactly where they were. This is not about arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better or wiser than others. It's about the quiet, undeniable loneliness that comes when you grow in ways that the people around you cannot see, cannot understand, and sometimes cannot even tolerate. Growth, real growth, is one of the most isolating experiences a human being can endure. And no one warns you about this. No one tells you that the price of becoming yourself is often the loss of everyone you thought would walk beside you forever. Thomas Merton once wrote about the false self, the identity we build to please others, to belong, to be accepted. And for most of our lives, we wear this mask so well that we forget it's even there. We laugh when we're supposed to laugh. We nod when we're supposed to agree. We become what the room needs us to be, and in return, we are loved, welcomed, included. But then something happens, a loss, a betrayal, a moment of unbearable clarity. And suddenly, the mask feels too heavy. The performance feels too exhausting. And you realize that you've been playing a character in someone else's story for so long that you've forgotten who you actually are. This is where the danger begins. Because the moment you stop performing, the moment you start living from your truth instead of their expectations, everything changes. The people who loved the mask will not love what's beneath it. The friendships built on shallow ground will crack under the weight of your depth. And you will find yourself standing alone in a room full of people who still know your name but no longer know you. And here is the paradox. The more awake you become, the more asleep everyone else seems. The more you question, the more their certainty feels like blindness. The more you feel, the more their numbness feels unbearable. And you start to wonder, am I growing or am I just drifting away from everything that once felt like home? There's a specific kind of grief that comes with outgrowing people. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's the quiet realization that the conversations you used to have no longer nourish you. That the places you used to go no longer feel alive. That the people you used to call family now feel like strangers wearing familiar faces. You still love them. That's the cruelest part. You still remember who they were to you, who you were together. But you also know deep in your bones that you can no longer shrink yourself to fit into the shape they need you to be. And so you begin to pull away, not out of anger, not out of judgment, but out of survival. Because there comes a point where staying small to make others comfortable becomes a form of self-betrayal. And you realize that loyalty to your own soul must come before loyalty to people who only love the version of you that no longer exists. Merton understood this. He spent years in silence, in solitude, watching the world from a distance. And what he saw was this. Most people are terrified of their own depth. They avoid silence because silence reveals too much. They avoid stillness because stillness demands honesty. And they avoid people like you, people who have stopped running, because your presence reminds them of everything they're trying not to feel. This is why growth is so lonely. Not because you've changed, and they haven't, but because your change makes their stagnation visible. Your questions make their certainty uncomfortable. Your courage to leave the familiar makes their fear of the unknown undeniable. And so they will try to pull you back. They will call you distant, cold, different. They will remind you of who you used to be, as if that version of you is the only one they're willing to accept. They will make you feel guilty for evolving, as if growth is a betrayal of the bond you once shared. But here's what they don't understand. You didn't leave them behind. You left behind the version of yourself that was keeping you both stuck. You left behind the patterns that were draining you. You left behind the roles that were suffocating your spirit. And if they cannot see that, if they cannot honor that, then the love you shared was never meant to survive your transformation. I once knew someone who spent years trying to bridge the gap between who they were becoming and who their family needed them to be. They would visit home and feel the weight of unspoken expectations pressing down on them like a heavy fog. They would sit at the dinner table and listen to conversations that felt hollow, surface level, repetitive. And they would smile and nod and pretend that nothing had changed because they didn't want to hurt anyone. But the truth was, something had changed. They had tasted silence and couldn't go back to noise. They had found meaning and couldn't pretend that distractions were enough anymore. They had learned to sit with their own soul, and now the company of people who avoided theirs felt unbearable. So one day, they stopped pretending. They stopped forcing the connection. They stopped shrinking. And their family called them selfish, ungrateful, lost. Because the only version of growth they could recognize was the kind that kept everyone comfortable. And this is the test. This is where you discover what you're really made of, because the world will always reward you for staying small. It will praise you for being agreeable, for being easy, for not asking too many questions or demanding too much space. But your soul will wither in that smallness. It will ache in that silence. It will die in that compromise. And so you must choose. You must choose between the love that requires you to disappear and the love that allows you to be fully seen. You must choose between belonging to a crowd that doesn't know you and belonging to yourself, even if it means standing alone. Merton chose solitude, not because he hated people, but because he loved truth more than comfort. He loved God more than approval. He loved his own soul more than the illusion of connection. And in that choice, he found a kind of peace that most people never touch. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires a courage that most are unwilling to summon. The courage to disappoint. The courage to be misunderstood. The courage to walk away from love that only exists when you stay hidden. And here's what no one tells you. The loneliness doesn't last forever. At first, it feels unbearable. You look around and see that everyone else seems so connected, so certain, so secure in their tribes, and you feel like you're floating in empty space, untethered, invisible. But slowly something shifts. The silence becomes less frightening. The solitude becomes less heavy. And you start to realize that you're not alone. You're just no longer surrounded by people who make you feel alone. You're no longer drowning in noise that pretends to be connection. And then one day you meet someone who sees you, really sees you, not the mask, not the performance, not the version of you that makes them comfortable, but the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And in that moment, you understand what you were searching for all along. Not more people, but the right people, people who don't need you to shrink, people who don't fear your depth, people who can hold your silence without trying to fill it. These people are rare. And they will not come into your life until you've cleared out the space, until you've stopped clinging to connections that were never meant to sustain you, until you've stopped betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. This is the gift of outgrowing people. Not the loss, but the clearing, the opening, the return to yourself. Because when you stop performing, you stop attracting people who only love performances. When you stop pretending, you stop attracting people who need you to pretend. And when you finally, fully, courageously become yourself, you start attracting people who can love you exactly as you are. But you have to be willing to walk through the wilderness first. You have to be willing to let go of hands that were never really holding you. You have to be willing to trust that the people who are meant for you will find you, not because you chased them, but because you stopped running from yourself. Merton said that we cannot find ourselves in noise and agitation. We find ourselves in silence and stillness, and I believe that's true not just for solitude but for relationships. We cannot find real connection in crowds that demand we disappear. We find it in the quiet presence of people who let us breathe. And so, if you are in that season, if you are watching people walk away, or if you are the one walking away, know this. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not doing anything wrong. You are simply becoming. And becoming is never a comfortable process. It's messy, it's painful, it's lonely. But it is also sacred, it is also necessary, and it is the only path toward a life that feels true. You cannot grow and stay the same. You cannot evolve and remain in places that require you to stay small. And you cannot become who you're meant to be while clinging to people who only loved who you used to be, this doesn't mean you stop loving them. It doesn't mean you wish them harm or hold resentment in your heart. It simply means you honor the truth that not everyone is meant to walk the entire road with you. Some people are meant for a season. Some people are meant to teach you what you don't want. Some people are meant to show you what love is not, so that you can recognize it when it finally arrives. And when you understand this, when you really understand it, the leaving becomes less bitter. The distance becomes less painful. Because you realize that you're not abandoning anyone. You're releasing them. You're setting them free to live their journey while you honor your own. There is a kind of love that requires presence, and there is a kind of love that requires distance. And both are holy, both are real, and both are necessary. The people who are meant for you will not be threatened by your growth. They will celebrate it. They will hold space for your transformation without trying to control it. They will meet you in your depth without needing you to explain yourself, and they will love you not despite your evolution, but because of it. But you will never find those people if you keep sacrificing your truth to keep the wrong ones comfortable. So here is what I want you to know. If you are in the middle of this, if you are standing in the gap between who you were and who you are becoming, keep walking. Even when it feels lonely, even when it feels like you're leaving everything behind, even when the voices around you are telling you to come back, to stay the same, to stop asking so many questions. Keep walking, because on the other side of this wilderness is a version of yourself that you've been searching for your entire life. A version that is free, a version that is whole, a version that no longer needs permission to exist. And when you finally meet that version of yourself, when you finally arrive at that place of inner alignment, you will understand that you didn't leave everyone behind. You left behind the illusion that you ever needed to be anyone other than yourself to be loved. Merton found this, in his solitude, in his silence, in his willingness to walk away from a world that wanted to consume him. He found that the truest form of love is not the love that clings, but the love that liberates. The love that says, I see you, I honor you, and I trust you enough to let you become. And this is the love you must give yourself. Before you can give it to anyone else, before you can receive it from anyone else, you must learn to see yourself, honor yourself, and trust yourself enough to let yourself become. Even if it means leaving everyone behind, even if it means walking alone for a while, even if it means that the life you're building looks nothing like the life you thought you wanted. Because in the end, the only life worth living is the one that is true. The only love worth having is the love that lets you breathe. And the only people worth keeping are the ones who can hold your fullness without needing to dim your light. So if you are growing, if you are changing, if you are becoming someone that the people around you no longer recognize, congratulations. You are doing the work that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You are choosing truth over comfort. You are choosing depth over ease. You are choosing yourself even when it costs you everything. And that is not selfish, that is not cold, that is not wrong. That is the most courageous, most sacred thing a human being can do. To become fully themselves in a world that profits from their smallness. To speak their truth in rooms that demand their silence. To walk away from love that only exists when they stay hidden. This is what it means to grow up. Not to become harder or colder or more closed off, but to become more yourself, to become more honest, to become more awake. And yes, sometimes that means you will leave people behind, but more accurately, it means you will leave behind the versions of yourself that were never real to begin with. You will leave behind the masks, the performances, the roles you played to belong. And in that leaving, you will find something far more valuable than approval or acceptance or the comfort of familiar faces. You will find yourself, the real, raw, unfiltered self that has been waiting beneath the surface all along. And when you find that self, when you finally come home to who you really are, you will understand that you were never truly connected to the people you lost. You were only connected to the idea of them, the version of them that lived in your mind. The version of the relationship that required you to stay small. But real connection doesn't require sacrifice. Real connection doesn't demand that you disappear. Real connection meets you in your fullness and says, yes, this, all of this. And until you find that kind of connection, it is better to walk alone. It is better to sit in silence. It is better to be lonely in your truth than surrounded by people in your lie. Because loneliness in truth is temporary. But loneliness in pretending lasts forever. It follows you into every room, every relationship, every moment of your life. And no amount of people, no amount of noise, no amount of distraction can fill the void that opens when you abandon yourself to belong. So don't abandon yourself. Not for anyone, not for anything. Not even for the promise of love or connection or family or home. Because the only home that matters is the one you build inside yourself. And no one can take that from you. No one can make you leave that. No one can tell you it's wrong. That home is yours, that truth is yours, that becoming is yours. And anyone who truly loves you will not ask you to leave it. They will simply pull up a chair, sit beside you in the silence and say, "I see you, I'm here and I'm not afraid." Those are the people worth keeping. Those are the people worth waiting for. Those are the people who will not be left behind because they were never asking you to stay small in the first place. Everyone else? Let them go. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with gratitude for what they taught you and grace for what they could not give. And then keep walking, keep growing, keep becoming. Because the most beautiful thing you will ever create in this life is not something you build with your hands. It's not something you achieve or accumulate or display for others to see. It's the person you become when you finally stop pretending, when you finally stop performing, when you finally come home to the truth of who you are and decide that this, all of this, is enough. That is the masterpiece. That is the art. That is the life worth living. And if it means walking alone for a while, so be it. Because the solitude of truth is far richer than the company of pretending. And the person you become in that solitude will attract a kind of love you never knew existed. A love that doesn't ask you to change. A love that doesn't need you to explain. A love that simply sees you and says, "Yes, you, exactly as you are." That love is coming. But first, you must become the person who can receive it. And that requires you to let go of everything and everyone that taught you love was something you had to earn by disappearing. Love is not earned. Love is recognized. And the people who are meant to love you will recognize you the moment you stop hiding. So stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for the space you take up in this world. Because you were never meant to be small. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to live a life that looks like everyone else's. You were meant to grow, to evolve, to become. And if that means leaving people behind, then that's not a failure. That's a testament to your courage. That's proof that you chose yourself when it would have been easier to stay. And that choice, that sacred, terrifying, beautiful choice, is the beginning of everything. The beginning of real love, real connection, real life. But let me tell you something else, something that might surprise you. This process of leaving people behind, this process of growing beyond the familiar, it's not linear, it's not clean, it's not a straight path from who you were to who you're becoming. There are nights when you'll question everything. There are moments when you'll wonder if you made a mistake, if you gave up too soon, if you were too harsh, too quick to judge, too unwilling to compromise. And in those moments, you might find yourself reaching back, testing the waters, calling old friends just to see if maybe, possibly, there's still a bridge that hasn't burned. And sometimes you'll find that the distance was all in your head, that they've grown too, that the space between you has become fertile ground for a new kind of connection. But more often, you'll find that nothing has changed, that they're still exactly where you left them, still having the same conversations, still avoiding the same questions, still living in the same patterns that you had to escape to survive. And you'll realize that your nostalgia wasn't for them. It was for the version of yourself that still believed that connection was worth the cost of your authenticity. This is one of the hardest lessons. That memory is a liar. It softens the edges. It highlights the good moments and blurs the reasons you left. It makes you forget the suffocation you felt in those relationships, the way you had to hold your breath just to fit into rooms that were never built for someone like you. Memory will tell you that you were happy, but your body remembers differently. Your body remembers the tension, the exhaustion, the constant negotiation between who you were and who you had to pretend to be. And when you return, even just for a visit, your body will remind you why you left in the first place. There's a reason Merton stayed in the monastery. Not because the outside world was evil or wrong, but because he knew that certain environments make certain transformations impossible. He knew that you cannot become contemplative in chaos. You cannot find silence in noise. You cannot discover your true self while surrounded by people who only see your shadow. And this is what people don't understand when they judge you for leaving. They think you're running away. They think you're being difficult or dramatic or unnecessarily complicated. But you're not running from anything, you're running toward something, toward a version of yourself that can only emerge in certain conditions, toward a life that can only be built when you stop trying to fit into blueprints that were never drawn for you. This is the work of individuation, as Jung called it, the process of becoming separate, distinct, fully yourself, and it requires that you betray every expectation, every role, every identity that was assigned to you by family, by culture, by the unconscious agreements you made before you knew you were making them. Some people never do this work. They live their entire lives as echoes of other people's desires. They marry who they're supposed to marry. They work jobs that look impressive on paper. They say the right things at the right times. And from the outside, their lives look successful, comfortable, complete. But inside there's a howling emptiness, a sense that they're living someone else's dream, that they've sacrificed something essential, something irreplaceable, in exchange for approval and acceptance and the illusion of belonging. And the tragedy is that most people don't even realize this is happening until it's too late, until they're 50, 60, 70 years old, looking back at their lives and wondering where they went, wondering who they might have been if they'd had the courage to disappoint people, the courage to be misunderstood, the courage to stand alone. This is why the work you're doing, the work of leaving, of growing, of becoming, is so important, not just for you, but for everyone who's watching, everyone who's stuck in their own performance, everyone who's wondering if it's possible to live differently. You are showing them that it is, that you can walk away from everything that's killing you and still survive, that you can choose yourself without becoming selfish, that you can grow without becoming arrogant, that you can be alone without being lonely, and some of them will hate you for it, because your freedom makes their cage visible, your courage makes their fear undeniable, your willingness to risk everything for authenticity makes their compromise feel like cowardice. But some of them will thank you. Maybe not out loud, maybe not for years, but somewhere inside they'll recognize what you've done. They'll see that you gave them permission, permission to question, permission to change, permission to become. And this is the ripple effect of transformation. When you choose yourself, you don't just change your own life, you change the lives of everyone who witnesses your courage. You plant seeds in people who aren't ready to grow yet, but will remember your example when their time comes. Merton did this. He didn't just live in solitude for himself. He wrote, he shared. He let the world see what happens when a human being commits fully to their own becoming. And decades after his death, people are still reading his words and recognizing themselves in his journey, still finding permission in his choices, still learning that it's possible to live from truth instead of fear. This is your legacy too. Not the people you left behind, but the path you're creating, the example you're setting, the proof you're providing that there's another way to live. And it won't always feel noble. Most days, it will just feel hard. You'll wake up and wonder if you're doing the right thing. You'll see photos of old friends gathering without you and feel a pang of exclusion. You'll go to family events and feel like a ghost, present but not really there, watching everyone perform the same tired scripts while you stand in the margins silent and separate. But then there will be moments, small moments, quiet moments, when you're sitting alone and you realize that your own company doesn't feel lonely anymore. When you're having a conversation with someone new and you don't have to censor yourself. When you're making a decision and you don't have to consider everyone else's opinion first. And in those moments, you'll feel it. The rightness of your choice, the alignment of your life, The deep, bone-level certainty that you are finally living from your center instead of your edges. This is what they can't see from the outside. They see the loneliness, the distance, the loss. But they don't see the peace, the clarity, the freedom. They don't see how much lighter you feel without the weight of their expectations, how much more space you have without the clutter of their projections, how much more alive you are without the numbness you needed to survive their company. And maybe they never will. Maybe you will always be the one who left, the one who changed, the one who couldn't just be satisfied with what everyone else settled for. And if that's the story they need to tell about you, let them. Because you know the truth. You know that you didn't leave because you were ungrateful or selfish or broken. You left because you loved yourself enough to save your own life. You left because staying would have meant dying by degrees. You left because you finally understood that some loves are poison disguised as home, and the only way to heal is to walk away. This is not easy wisdom. This is earned wisdom. The kind that comes from standing in the fire and refusing to run. The kind that comes from facing yourself in the mirror and admitting that you've been lying. The kind that comes from choosing the unknown over the unbearable. And once you have this wisdom, you can't unknow it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't unsee what you've seen or unfeel what you've felt. You are marked by it, changed by it. And everyone who looks at you will sense that something is different, even if they can't name what it is. Some will be drawn to it. They will feel the authenticity radiating from you and want to understand how you got there. They will ask you questions, seek your advice, try to learn from your journey, and some will be repelled by it. They will feel threatened by your wholeness because it exposes their fragmentation. They will call you intense, too much, overwhelming. They will create distance not because you pushed them away, but because your presence demands a level of honesty they're not ready to face. Both responses are valid, both are necessary. Because you are not here to be comfortable for everyone. You are not here to shrink so that others can stay small. You are here to be fully yourself and let the world respond however it needs to. This is the final lesson, the one that takes the longest to learn, that you cannot control how people receive you. You cannot force understanding. You cannot make people ready for your truth before their time. All you can do is live it, speak it, embody it, and trust that the right people will recognize it when they see it, that the right doors will open when you stop knocking on the wrong ones, that the right life will build itself around you when you stop trying to fit into lives that were never meant for you. So keep choosing, keep growing, keep walking, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts, even when you wonder if anyone will ever understand, because the life you're walking toward is worth it. The person you're becoming is worth it, and the love that's waiting on the other side of this transformation is worth every moment of solitude you endure to get there. This is what it means to grow up. This is what it means to leave everyone behind. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about the one person who needed your love the most, yourself. And in that caring, in that choosing, in that sacred act of becoming, you will discover something that no one can ever take from you. A home that exists not in any place or person, but in the truth of who you are. A love that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. A peace that comes not from having everything figured out, but from finally being honest about what you don't know. This is the gift on the other side of loss. This is the treasure hidden in the wilderness. This is what Merton found in his solitude. What mystics have found throughout history. What you will find when you stop running and finally stand still in the center of your own becoming. Not answers. Not certainty. Not the end of loneliness or struggle or doubt. But something better, something truer. Something that feels like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. The simple, profound, unchangeable reality of yourself. Whole, real, enough. And from that place, from that center, you will build a life that doesn't look like anyone else's. A life that doesn't follow the rules or meet the expectations or fit into the categories everyone tries to force you into. A life that is entirely, authentically, unapologetically yours. And that life will be lonely sometimes. It will be misunderstood. It will be judged and questioned and criticized by people who will never understand why you had to walk away from everything they value to find what you needed. But it will also be beautiful. It will be free. It will be true. And in the end, that's all that matters. Not how many people walked beside you, not how many people understood, not how many people approved, but whether you lived in a way that honored the deepest truth of your being. Whether you had the courage to become yourself, even when it cost you everything. Whether you chose authenticity over acceptance, truth over comfort, yourself over everyone who needed you to stay small. That is the measure of a life well lived. That is the legacy worth leaving. That is the growth worth honoring. So if you are in the middle of this, if you are leaving people behind, if you are becoming someone that even you don't fully recognize yet, keep going. The road ahead is uncertain, but it is yours. And there is no greater gift you can give yourself or the world than the courage to walk it.